All right, it is time for a recent release roundup. There hasn't been one for a minute. Part of that is end of the year. There's so many other things to talk about in the film, and also life was a lot hectic. But also, tail end of the year, there just are not as many new releases. I feel like August, September is like a real big push, and then November. And what I chose to do for this kind of catch up is we're gonna go through the end of 2022, but only for books that I have not read or talked about on the channel, because there were so many books in November, and I do have a tier ranking of the recent releases I have read in 2022, so you can watch that video if you want to just know my thoughts. I know the point of these videos is like I go onto the bookish internet and see what people are thinking about books and kind of aggregate, compile that for everyone. If you're new to these videos, that's what I do. I'll have a Goodreads playlist to the books if you want to read synopses, and I'll have every video that I have watched and will mention down below with timestamps for the books we're going to look into. So hopefully this is a good resource if you were like, what did I miss at the end of the year that I might still want to read? And I have 11 titles that I want to talk about in this video just to kind of get back into the groove. And all those caveats, updates out of the way, let's get into it. I don't really have an order today other than it felt like the right flow from book to book when I wrote it all down in my notes. And we're just starting with Jackal. So this is a book that consistently, every review I watched was like, it's kind of like a mystery thriller horror. Like, it's not one genre. If you go into it for a purist mindset for either of those genres, you're not going to have a good time or good expectations for it, because it's a blend of all those things. There are supernatural elements. It is one of those more societal focused horrors where we're looking at where society has dropped the ball. In particular, this is the story of a woman going back to her small town. She's a black woman going back to a wedding. This small town has a lot of microaggressions, bigoted attitudes and things, and she also just has like hometown trauma, you know, like when you go back home, there's always baggage there, there's always a little regression. And during this time, every year, young girls go missing, and one of her close friends' young girls goes missing, and then there's the mystery, trying to unpack that. And, you know, it's commentary on why have all these black young women gone missing, and we don't really make a fuss about it. This has been a chronic thing for years. So that's the focus of this. For the most part, I saw people have generally a 4-star experience for it, although there was one really negative review that I saw by Jesse at Bow Ties and Books, if you want to check that one out. They even liked the societal conversations, but really everything else in terms of character work, writing, pacing did not land in their review when I was watching that in a wrap-up, but I'll have that link down below. But in general, like Stephanie Bookish, she had a 4-star experience with this. Books and Lala had a good time with this. It seems like, in general, unless you really wanted something specific, this was a good time for most people. Like, I'm a little intrigued because it's also only 300 pages, which seems like the right length for me for exploring this type of topic. Another horror that I have on this list is White Horse. This came out, I believe, in November, and this is also one of those kind of horror with light paranormal, like there's a haunting by her mother sort of thing happening here, but it is, again, more focused on societal issues and the horrors of where society has dropped the ball. So yeah, she's haunted by the spirit of her mother. There's a lot of focus on loss and trauma, generational trauma, the loss of history and ancestral knowledge. That is a big focus of this work. I will point you to a bunch of reviewers down below, including Bethany, Audrey, Sin, and Stephanie. They all had thoughts on this, but I got the sense while watching reviews that potentially, having not read much by this author, if you like Stephen Graham Jones' thematic focus, like I don't think there's necessarily a writing overlap, that this might be another horror work that works for you. Up next, I don't know what genre this book is, and I've watched a lot of reviews, but this is Sign Here. I think a lot of reviews actually brought up, this is like 5 books in one. And a lot of people were like, I had a really great, fun, engaging time. I loved the humor. This is not perfect. That was like so many reviews. And then I think Books and Lala was like, but I would recommend this to most people because it's probably a weird book that works for most people. It's generally accessible, even with its weirdness and its flaws. At its core, our main character is supposed to try, as he works in hell, get a whole family, I think, to sign a deal or something like that. You know, one of those Faustian things. And then there's a family drama focus. Like, I think we're focused on this family that he is trying to get to sign this Faustian deal and the drama that happens with that family. That's all I know. I'm honestly way more intrigued about this one now, having watched the reviews, than I was before, because, like, I don't think this cover tells you anything. But I do like Faustian deals. Like, I think my first one was the musical Damn Yankees. That one's fun. And then Light from Uncommon Stars has one. So, like, I do generally like it, especially when it is used in this kind of quirky, humorous way. In a book review where someone really loved it was Julia at An Abundance of Books. So that one's an incredibly positive, gushing review if you want to see why someone really connected with the weirdness. I didn't really see negative reviews. I think most people were just like, yeah, I kept wanting to read the book, and that's kind of what you want from this type of thing. I don't know what genre it is. I don't think it's a thriller, right? And I don't think it's a mystery. It's just a drama, I think. I think it's just a speculative drama, and it works well in that vein with the humor. And there were also some comparisons to Celest Ng's writing style, and that leads us right into the Celeste book, and that is Our Missing Hearts. I read one book by this author, Little Fires Everywhere, because it took place in my hometown, or adjacent to my hometown. I grew up in Lyndhurst, but Shaker Heights is next door. That's where my church was. So, like, I know where Shaker Heights is. I've driven those streets. I don't really like that boulevard, but there is a Yours Truly. But this is not about that. This is kind of near future general fiction. Like, I hesitate to call it dystopian or anything like that, but it's a contemporary general fiction book that's focusing on a near potential future and the societal implications of that, with the lens being on Bird, this young boy, and his mother. I think it's dual POV. And this is a future world where we are preserving American values. And it sounds to me very similar to what we do now when we're trying to censor what's allowed at libraries, what children are allowed to be exposed to, what representation is considered American or not American. And specifically, Bird is half Chinese, and his mother is out of his life. She was a Chinese American poet, and I think she crossed a line. And so Bird has always been disavowing his mother and lives with his father. And so we're following Bird, but I think also later we follow his mother. And in general, I have 3 reviews down below, and they all, I think, had generally the same thoughts, although Bookish Sabrina had the most critical view of it, so if you want like a good critical review, I'd point you there. But they all, I think, are Celeste fans, and this was probably not their favorite. Like, they still enjoyed reading it. It still had the prose that they like from her, but it wasn't as gripping to them as her other 2 works that are out. We're now going to pivot to fantasy. I think this might be my only, like, this is only fantasy sort of book, like your kind of classic chonker. And that's City of Last Chances by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I have reviews from Alan, Booked Panda, and Judith, and in that order is how much they had fun with it. So I definitely have 3 reviews for you to really decide whose taste do you align with more and if this will be worth your time. It is a standalone city rebellion-focused fantasy. And like a lot of Adrian Tchaikovsky, it's a long one, and I've only read Children of Time, and I would say Children of Time was a little long. I've also read a novella, and I would say for a novella, that novella was a little long. So if you want brevity, if you want someone to get to the point, Adrian Tchaikovsky's not going to do that. This is a consistently slow to medium-paced book based off all the reviews I've seen. And I think it's going to be tricky knowing where to put your focus when you first start reading it. I got the sense from every reviewer that there are a lot of point of views you get thrown into right away, and you don't know which ones are important, which ones you're supposed to focus on, who is your cast of characters you're following. But I do think where this work will excel is if you are thematically driven, if you're ideas driven. It seems like that it handles the idea of rebellion, transitions of power, who's in charge, the extremes of ideologies incredibly well. I got this from Alan's review specifically, and for me, having just read another book that I thought really handled the ideas of rebellion really well, that actually has me kind of interested, especially since this is a standalone, but also I get worried that I wouldn't have for myself enough character connection because I need a little bit more than ideas usually for a fantasy novel to really click for me. But that was something that sounded really good. Judith, I think, liked it the least, if you ever align with her fantasy taste. And then Booked Panda was, in the middle. So, like I said, those reviews are down below if you want more thoughts. And now we will get into another fantasy, but it's like a novella, so our next 2 are like novellas sort of thing. And this is Tread of Angels by Rebecca Roanhorse. And so, yeah, this is like a murder, mystery, western, steampunk fantasy based off the reviews I have seen. I unfortunately don't really have rave reviews for this one. I think the highest rating I saw was like a 4-star, maybe from Bethany. Bethany might have given it 4.5. I'm blanking on the exact number, but that Bethany's is the highest. Mara gave it a 3.5 and generally liked it, and then I saw a lot of 3s and 2.5s, and the complaint from everyone was this should have been longer. that there was a lot of great ideas, but not enough room for them to breathe, and not enough time for things to develop in a way that I think would have the payoff you'd want in this story. But that said, this does have angel and demon elements if you've been missing that in your fantasy space. And there is also a romantic element and a mystery if those are things you like in your novellas. I do think if you like Rebecca Roanhorse's pacing and writing style, this probably won't be a complete miss for you, but based off these reviews, it won't be a new favorite. And I think it kind of shows how hard it was for all the pieces to come together, that I've watched a lot of reviews and I don't have a strong sense of what this is about. Part of that is I'm just sometimes not good at picking these things out when I listen. My auditory learning isn't amazing, but for the most part, after I've listened to enough reviews, I have a sense of what a book's about, and this one, not as much. And I do think that, like, kind of speaks to how this book was maybe trying to do too much in the space it was in. Like, I know our one character can walk between worlds, and there's people who are descended from angels and demons, and based off that, there's a hierarchy in the society. Like, I have a sense of the world building, because that's what people wanted to talk about. But I don't have a sense of the plot. Like, I don't have a strong sense of that. But this other novella is actually a novella that I'm really interested in now after all of these reviews. And it's a novella where people who don't even like novellas was like, if you want to try novellas, try this out. And that is Even Though I Knew the End, which, man, that title is really good. That title, I think, really sets you up for what this story is going to be about. I mean, I haven't read it, but, like, I feel like my expectations have been set. And so this is a historical fantasy noir adjacent sort of work, where we have this detective who's taking on one last job. Her clock is coming down. She'd made a deal, I think, with the devil, another Faustian sort of thing, and she knows her time is running out. And so she wasn't even going to take this job because she just wanted to enjoy the rest of her time, but for reasons takes his job and things get weird. It's in Chicago, if you want a 1930s Chicago set detective fantasy mystery. But the thing that makes me want to read it, and the thing that everyone raved about, is our detective is in a relationship with this woman. It's a sapphic relationship, and apparently that chemistry, that relationship is so well grounded and well realized, and I eat that stuff up all the time. And it seems like this book has realistic stakes and it has a good pacing for it. So if I was going to pick up a new release novella from this year that I haven't gotten to already, this one's at the top of my list. So yeah, the only complaint that I got from anyone is that they wanted more, not because it needed more. Unlike Tread of Angels, like, this was more, they wanted more because they just loved being with these people. Like, they just loved the people, they loved the scenario, they just wanted to spend more time there because it would have been fun. I will say I'm posting all the reviews I watched down below. Depending on who you are as a spoiler reader, some of them might be a little too spoilery in how they discuss the emotional impact the book had on them, but just know, I guess, this is the type of book that also people really want to talk about how it made them feel, especially near the ending. I guess I'll just be vague there for anyone who's super spoiler sensitive. Continuing on with the mystery theme, because apparently the end of 2022 was the time for mysteries, and I don't read a lot of mysteries, which makes sense why these are the releases I haven't read yet. And this one's Station Eternity. This is set in space, and it's supposed to be like a very nod to cozy mysteries, specifically Murder, She Wrote, but in a hard sci-fi setting. And this is a character who is very self-aware that she keeps ending up in scenarios where people die around her and she needs to solve the mystery, and so she's trying to escape that pattern, and of course does not successfully do so, and then we have a mystery to unfurl. And so yeah, people generally liked it. I think if you don't like cozy mystery, this is not going to work for you, because when I saw negative reviews, like Rachel from Shades of Orange, it's like, well, she didn't want a cozy mystery. She thought that this character would be more of like a Sherlock Holmes character, and that's not who she really was. Like I said, probably more like a character from Murder, She Wrote and other cozy mysteries. But if you want that in space, could be really fun. I do think consistently people who have read other works by this author found this one not as good for them as the other previous ones they've read. So I guess if you are a fan of this author, know that going in, that this might not meet your expectations. And kind of just diving right into the next cozy mystery sci-fi, this is The Spare Man. And I'm curious about this one, although I still need to read the Calculated Stars series by this author. But this is their newest release, and we have a very privileged, wealthy individual on a cruise for her honeymoon, and her husband gets blamed for the death of this man, and so now she needs to use her sleuthing and privileges to get him out of it. And that's kind of the conceit of this cozy mystery. And she is also a main character who has a disability, and there is like tech that helps her manage it, and she suffers from PTSD trauma. So those are representations you can find in this book. I know Bethany in one of her reviews discussed, this is her written Goodreads review, though I'll have her video down below as well, that one of the coping mechanisms that this character uses for anxiety is something that she had learned in therapy. So there's really good representation there in the main character, and it seems like it's just a fun, cozy, close circle mystery time. Like, if those are any of your buzzwords and you want that in bookish form, I would point you this way. But again, there were 2 reviews I saw. One was Rachel from Shades of Orange, and the other is a 1-star review video. I'll have linked down below. I'll mark it out if it's the 1-star review video, where they both like the Calculated Stars series, but did not like this one. So it's not like if you like this author, you're going to for sure like this project. That's not a trend I saw universally. And the last 2 we're going to get into are young adult. I have Strike the Zither by Joan, and I was curious about this one because I have another book by this author on my shelf. And this is inspired by the Three Kingdoms classic work, and it takes place in 1480, so it's a historical fantasy sort of thing. And our main character is a strategist. She's really good at strategy, and a bunch of people brought up that that was done really well, and she has to like infiltrate a camp to do things for this warlord that she's like loyal to. So that's our main character's scenario. There is a love interest, so if you are so done with that and you're a young adult, that is here. But what everyone was saying, without spoiling anything, and they said it's not even on the back of the book, there is a moment in this novel where things take a turn they were not ready for. And that's really interesting to me, that it tricked so many people. It almost sounds like a challenge. Like, well, if I pick it up, will I be tricked? Like, I don't know. I probably will wait for the sequel to come out before I try this, but I have reviews with Judith, and Got a Thing for Things was a great review, and then Ari Moon. Ari Moon does these great videos where it's all just text and like ambiance in the background, and I just always think they're so thoughtful and calming. Highly recommend that channel. And Get a Thing for Things was a great overall review, and also of the production of the book and everything you get in it. So, but yeah. We got a smart main character who's also still allowed to be a kid, like it's still young adult. Like, this book is not breaking that mold. It is a book about teens for teens. So yeah. The next one I watched so many videos on. This is Bloodmarked, the second book for Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. And I have no interest in reading this, not because I have any strong opinions. It's just not my buzzword salad, like, sort of thing. Like, it's just not, it's not my thing. But Legendborn was really big when it came out, and it's kind of very controversial. At least on my Twitter feed, it's very controversial for people who really love it and for people who don't really love it. And so I watched a lot of videos and a lot of spoiler videos. Like, I didn't care if I was spoiled for the first book. I didn't care if I was spoiled for the second book. So down below, I'm going to have for you negative, middle of the road, and positive reviews, and I will mark how spoilery they are. Pretty much almost all of them, except for Marinez's, spoils the first book, potentially, or, like, there are reveals in the first book that, like, if you've read young adult, I don't think would be that surprising to you, but if you don't want to be spoiled, it would be hard to watch the second video of it. But I'll split it into negative, mid, and positive. Positive was Literary Princess, middle of the roads was Sam from Thoughts on Tomes, and Marinez from My Name is Marinez. And the negatives are Ince Monty Price, Miss W.C. Reader, and Ray from Bookmark Chronicles, and I watched all of them. And I guess if you don't want to watch any of these things, although I recommend it because it's really revealing how a work can thematically really resonate with some people and then really put off others. Like, I think it just really shows how divergent reading can be as an experience. This is because that's what's really happening, is if Legendborn worked for you thematically as a reader, if you connected to that main character's experience, the otherness that she's surrounded by, because if you don't know, Legendborn's about this black woman who she's still in high school, but she gets to go to like a college sort of program. She's like the only black woman there, and then has to deal with the fact that her ancestry is tied into this King Arthur situation, and she also has access to root magic and stuff like that, and it's about her making friends and coming to terms with her ancestry, and she just lost her mother, so there's a lot of trauma there. And so there's a lot of stuff thematically that works really well for a large readership, and then there are some things that are done in a way that do not work for other people. And if you were someone who was like, well, maybe those issues will be fixed in Bloodmarked, the answer is no, I guess. So if it didn't work for you in Legendborn, Bloodmarked is not going to work for you, unfortunately. I think in general, it's just not the focus of the author to fix those issues that keep coming up. And like the issues themselves are how little this character is allowed to interact in a meaningful way with other members of the Black community is the main complaint that I saw. Is just there's very limited opportunities for her to have those like healthy relationships. And although there is some small expansion in Bloodmarked, it really wasn't enough for the people with the negative reviews who already came into it with that baggage. So just know that. Also, there is a love mess triangle something. So if that's also a thing you're just not into anymore, I think it sounds kind of fun. It sounds very dramatic. But I've just learned that sometimes if I want drama, I need to find all of the messy love triangles in adult and YA. Like, I don't know. Sometimes I just like the drama. So that's generally where Bloodmarked is. It is the highest rated book of anything I've talked to you today. So for the vast majority of people, it is one of the hottest, newest young adult, and I'm actually surprised it didn't win the Goodreads Choice Awards, and it's probably because it came out so late in the year, if I'm being honest. So that's it for this video. It's a little shorter than normal somehow, probably because I only talked about 11 things. Again, I will have all of the videos down below. Please check these people out because they put in the work to put out standalone reviews and to read arcs and everything like that, and it's just great. I loved learning about a bunch of these. I have a few more I want to put on my radar. Let me know if there were any that you are now interested in reading. And then next month, we will be back looking into the January new releases. I already have my list. I've already watched like so many reviews on Spare because I was very interested in the reception of that. It was one of those books, again, like Bloodmarked. I don't want to read it. I just want to hear everyone's thoughts on it. If you want to just leave an emoji, though, and you don't have any thoughts, you just want to let me know you're here. We had a lot of sci-fi mysteries. So either a mystery emoji like in a magnifying glass or sci-fi or both, that would work. And otherwise, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.